Welcome to the serverless continuous integration and continuous delivery project presentation. We're all part of the cloud solution team. Nacho, Enju, Pooja, Cheka, Hanno, Mitchell, Chupin, Sebas and Pacho worked on this project. If a team is presented with the challenge to create an API to validate social security numbers, the team may decide to implement this as a serverless application using AWS solutions. The usual way that the team will start developing this solution is to start writing code in the local machines and then creating a Git repository where to store copies of that code. Once they're done with that, they're probably going to start to manually build and deploy the AWS elements that they need in order to run their serverless application. They're also going to do manual testing on this. This solution leaves a lot of gaps because it provides no proper coordination between the local code and the code deployed in the application. We think there's a better way to build this sort of application. Imagine that we already have a version of our app that is responding to our request in AWS. If this is our API endpoint, then we can see that we already have a response from that endpoint. If we wanted to make a change to that code, we can just go into our local repository version of our code and then make a change. Once we're done with our changes, we can just submit our code. If we push our code to a repository, that's going to start a series of events that then are going to trigger the application updated to be built again, tested, and then deployed. In this strategy, we are leveraging all of the AWS tools in order to accomplish that solution. We're using AWS code pipeline. If we look at our AWS pipeline, we can see that it already picked the most recent version of the code and that it also started building the application. In this step, it's going to gather all the requirements and all the dependencies needed for our code to run. That build stage can be configured for any kind of application. In this case, we're using a Node.js application, but it can be also implemented for Java and C. Once the build is completed, the deployment process kicks in, and here you can choose to deploy directly to prod if you have already configured tests that are going to ensure that you have continuous delivery, or you can also add a manual step to validate before you actually deploy your code to the final location. So with AWS code pipeline, you can make changes directly to your code and let AWS take care of building the project, test it, deploy it by creating AWS CloudFormation change sets, and then implementing those changes so that you can create the updated AWS elements that you need for your application. So in this case, it's going to create an Amazon API gateway and an updated AWS Lambda to respond to our requests. Once that deployment is finished, we should see our API giving us an updated response with the new version of our code. You can always take these CloudFormation definitions to define any kind of elements that exist today in AWS. So you can leverage S3, EC2, you can even create new endpoints or create new types of applications that are not just APIs, but also other types of serverless application. Now that our deployment is done, we can see that our application is giving us an updated response to our API. That's it for our presentation. Thank you very much.